Hello everyone, how are you doing? Oh, that was so weak. Hi everybody.
Hi.
Woo, nice. I'm Pastor Sue. For those of you who don't know, I think most of you do know. Welcome to our church. It's yours as well. It's God's church first and foremost, but it's our church. So anyway, it's great to see you all. I welcome you to your reunion. So glad to see the faces that I've gotten to know over the years. This is your home, so please make yourself at home. So I just wanted to give you a quick update on the church. Our church is doing well. We have a river baptism tomorrow. So anybody that wants to stay over for worship, we are all heading to the river for, I don't know, and I probably say this every year, but since I've been here, this is my 16th year. And we have baptized well into the hundreds of people in the Susquehanna River. And it never gets old. It is so joyous. And so we have a bunch going in the river tomorrow. So that is always a joy. Adding members and doing well. God is always such a great provider. And you know you're part of the foundation of this church, that God just keeps growing. So it's amazing. We just helped another well in Uganda be dug. We just paid $6,500 for another freshwater dug to be to be dug at a medical clinic, who right now has, we are partnering with other people within ABCAPAD. And if you don't know what ABCAPAD is, it's the American Baptist Churches of Pennsylvania and Delaware. So in case you don't know, we're American Baptist here. And so they come, they're good friends of mine, and they speak, and they have done so much in Uganda in different villages. In 2022 or 2023, we paid for another well that serves well over 1,000 people in generations to come. And it is drastically reducing the infant and child mortality rate. They just built a clinic, and right now they have a rain barrel catching rain for their source of water. And so on the spot, this congregation, after worship a couple weeks ago, said, nope, we want to build you a well, and voted on $6,500 to go with them. They leave, I think, tomorrow for Uganda, and the well will be dug soon. And it is just an amazing thing that this little church in the woods is blessed enough to help people in our own neighborhood and then all around the world. So that's just a touch. I just wanted to kind of share the highlights with you. I wanted to just take a minute to say, does anybody have any questions for me about this church? Anybody have any questions? How old is it? It was formed in 1893. Well, it was built in 1893. I believe it was formed next door at the Ziehmer home, and that's where they first gathered. Right. That home is not there anymore, but it was right next door in the field. So that was maybe 1891 or 1892, but the church was built in 1893. We do. Yep, we have an archive, and our church clerk keeps those. Yep. Very cool. I love history, so when I got here, I said, let's, cherish the history of this place, but let's make it look alive. And so in the past 15 and a half years, we have pretty much remodeled, redone, built on everything in this church. Please don't think that this is a boast. It is not. God has just blessed us. So He brought us together and built this church pretty much, again, from the ground up. There were 6 people here in 2009, and we didn't have hot water. We didn't even have hot water, and I'm weird about that. So I'm like, first thing is hot water, so people can wash hands. Don't shake hands unless you wash your hands in hot water. Not that I'm a germaphobe, but So we have done a lot to this church. But our main mission here is we try to give up to 30% of everything we bring in back out, because we have a philosophy and a belief here that we cannot outgive God. So we try to do as much as we can, and I think we're blessed for it. So, any other questions? It's very dangerous to give a preacher a pulpit and a microphone, and this preacher doesn't have much of a voice, but that does not matter to me. So, if not, I'll be around for a little bit, but at this point I'm going to open it up to, I don't know what's going to happen here, but it looks like Skylar's in charge, so I'm going to turn it over to him. Yes, you can.
All right, good afternoon. I guess it's afternoon now, everyone. My name is Skylar Boone. I'm going to sit down, so I'm going to be clicking things on my computer. I'm a great-great-grandson of William Ziehmer. This is now the third time that I've been to this reunion, and it's just a delight every year to reconnect with people and old relatives and new relatives that we didn't know about. And it's amazing to see how this family has spread out, and that's one of the ideas behind this map that I put together, which is by no means all-inclusive, but it's simply the names and addresses of the folks that we know about, that we happen to have on record, that have either are here or have come to the reunion, so you can see how we've spread out across the eastern part of the United States and then even all the way to the West Coast. If anyone's curious about who or where anyone is, we can feel free to come up to me later and we can look at it. You know, if you scroll over one of the dots, it shows you who that is. So kind of an interactive map there. A couple of things we're going to do today, integrating a little bit of multimedia capability to the reunion this year. We're going to have a little historical presentation. A couple different people will read some text about several of our relatives from the past, our ancestors. As we click through some slides, there'll be a little bit of music at one point, and then finally, for the sharing go-around intros where we all kind of touch base about what's going on in our lives. I have some PowerPoints from those of us that shared info, and we'll talk a little more about that. But to kick it off, we will go to the historical presentation here. And I think Courtney's going to start us off. So first will be Rosalie Siebert, read by Courtney Harwood.
So this would be Amelia Ziehmer's sister. This is Rosalie's story. She was born in Poland in 1854 to a German family named Hinkle. In 1875, Rosalie married William Siebert, and they later moved to the region of Bohemia in Russia, where William worked as a railroad watchman. There was great poverty in Russia at the time, and the government imposed increasing restrictions on the Germans living there. German businessmen owned large coffee and sugar plantations in Brazil, South America. Agents came to Russia to recruit Germans to work in Brazil. In 1890, the Sieberts, William Ziehmers, Kimmels, and other families left Russia for South America. Within a year of moving to Brazil, because of the tropical climate and the constant fear of dreaded yellow fever, the Sieberts and others came to North America, to this town of Winburn, Pennsylvania, while the Ziehmers stayed a year longer in Brazil. Rosalie and William Siebert made their home in the village of Forest. They encouraged Rosalie's sister, Amelia, and her husband, William Ziehmer, to leave Brazil and join them here. Both couples were founding members of what is now Forest Baptist Church. The Sieberts' home was just a few houses west of the church. They had a son, Fred, and a foster daughter. Fred married Clara Dunzig, and he worked at Phillipsburg State Hospital as an orderly. Fred and Clara had a daughter, Irene. Irene became a nurse and married Paul Ziegler. Paul and Irene had a daughter, Donna Jean. Paul enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Force during World War II, and on July 7, 1944, he was killed in action when the bomber on which he was radio operator was shot down over Halberstadt, Germany. Donna Jean was born that year. Irene tragically died in 1953 when Donna Jean was 9 years old. William, Rosalie, Fred, Clara, and Irene are all buried in Forest Baptist Cemetery. Paul's grave is in the Netherlands American Military Cemetery at Margraten, Netherlands.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Next up is going to be a reading about Uncle John, or John Ziehmer. Before we do the reading, we have about a 2-minute music clip, and the clip is going to be the Imperial Russian anthem from the 19th century. And the reason for that is that Uncle John served in the cavalry in the Tsar's military. So, just to kind of set the stage for the reading. And for the reading of Uncle John's presentation, Mr. Larry Burke. Welcome, sir.
Well, it's good to be together again. Sorry that I couldn't be here last year, but I'm happy to be here this year. And just like to say quickly that I heard about a man who paid a friend $70 to research his family tree. You never know what they're going to find when they research your family tree. So when they got all the research together, he had to pay the friend another 70 just to keep him quiet. But we have some godly heritage in the Ziehmer, Lipke, Yonke background in the family, and how wonderful. And many of our relatives are buried here, and Lord willing, someday I want to be buried here at Forest Baptist Cemetery as well. Well, I'm going to read about Uncle John, who lived just down over the hill here, a little ways. If you remember where Clara lived, just behind there, there's still a building, looks almost like a shed, but it looks like it could be 100 years old or more. So maybe it still is standing. John Ziehmer, also known as Uncle John. John Ziehmer was born in 1871 at Sengenstall in Novograd, Volinsky, Ziehmer, Russian, Ukraine. You're going to have to give me a little grace with some of these pronunciations. He was the brother of William, August, and Louis Ludwig Ziehmer, and Pauline Ziehmer Reinfeldt. John married Amelia Hamp about 1892. Shortly thereafter, in 1893, at age 22, he was drafted into the Russian army and served in the Life Guards, called the League Guards, of the 1st Division. Miloshi Regiment. The Miloshi Regiment was referred to as a Sorbian unit, the term Sorbian indicating that it was composed of men whose families were Germans from East Prussia. Because he was born in Russia, he was eligible for the Russian draft. Germans living in Russia who were born in Germany or Poland were subject to draft laws of those countries. His older brother William, born in Poland, registered there but drew a high number and was not called to serve. The lifeguards were responsible for protecting the Russian ruler, the Tsar. There were many different units of the lifeguards. John was known as an excellent horseman, and the Miloshi Regiment was most likely a cavalry unit. John saw the Tsar thousands of times as the lifeguards provided security wherever the Tsar was living or traveling. It's not likely that John had much, if any, personal contact with the Tsar. The lifeguards who served within the palace and those in close contact with the Tsar and his family had to be from the families of the Russian nobles. As a commoner and a non-Russian, John would not have fit that criteria. John entered the army during the reign of Tsar Alexander III. When Alexander died in November 1894, John was on duty at the funeral. Then on duty 3 weeks later at the wedding of the new Tsar, Nicholas, to Alexandra. At the coronation ceremonies for Nicholas in May 1895, John was also on duty. A massive crowd of celebrants was so dense that nearly 1,300 were crushed or trampled to death. John, along with all of the other lifeguards, was awarded a coronation medal for his service. His term of service was 3 years, 9 months. When he returned home from the army, he found his wife living with another man. Well, that's not a good idea. John and his wife separated but never divorced, and he never remarried. He farmed for a few years at Eli Shupka. John's mother emigrated to America in 1896 to join the William Ziehmer family at Windburn. In 1903, John also came, bringing with him his 15-year-old niece, Wilhelmina Minnie Reinfeldt, daughter of John and William's sister, Pauline Ziehmer Reinfeldt. Minnie was a cousin to the Ziehmer daughters. John and his mother lived in an apartment at the William Sieberts until John built his own house, which still stands today. John was an excellent carpenter, craftsman, and farmer. He loved children and doted on his nieces and their children and grandchildren. He died in 1952, and his grave is in the Forest Baptist Cemetery. When I go up to the cemetery, I want to see his grave. I think he died on my birthday, because I remember having a birthday party at Grandma and Grandpa Litke's, and I was, I think, 4 years old, and someone upstairs had died, and I think it was Uncle John. So I can confirm that probably with the date on his tombstone. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lori. Next, we'll have a presentation about Pauline Ziehmer. Mr. Thank you.
So my name is Tom Bielek. Come from California, not California, Missouri, not California, Pennsylvania, but the one on the West Coast. So I'm going to talk about a different forebear. I think most of you are descended from Wilhelm and William. Is that true? I guess so. So also there was children August and Ludwig. I don't think there's any of those here. So I represent the fourth line, which is Pauline. Paulina, I should use the German pronunciation. So we were going to come last year, but we got COVID. So we came this year. I feel like I do know some of you because the skit you did about William Ziehmer and his sojourn to Brazil, I remember you were in the skit, and I remember Pastor Sue doing introductions, so I do kind of know. But there was a lot of mysteries, which I'll go into. A lot of those were shaped up by Bob Saxton, who's modestly sitting in the back. It's a encyclopedia of knowledge, as you know. We're going to circle back to Bob so let's go to the next slide. And this is a recap of what you guys already know. These are the Ziehmer children, the original Ziehmers. So parents were Jan and Christina. And I'm not sure when they were married, but the first kid was Paulina, born 1859. So a total of 8 kids, 4 boys, 4 girls. The 4 boys came here to America. The 4 girls stayed behind, and we'll see that has ramifications to our story. The first 3 kids were born in what's now Poland, northwest of Warsaw. Technically, there was no Poland in those days. Poland had become weak, and unfortunately, if you become weak, you get torn up by your neighbors. So the Prussians had the west, the Russians had the east, and the Austro-Hungarians had the south. So they were born actually, technically, in German-controlled territory. The last 5 kids were moved to the province of Volhynia, which was a mixture of Ukraine. It's now northwest Ukraine, or southeast Poland, but now it'd be in Ukraine. But it was a mishmash of Germans and Ukrainians and Russians and Jews and Hungarians and just a whole bunch of people just living together. But let's go back in the story. So this is my wife Margaret in the red, and we were actually here at this church in 1992. You weren't here yet. So we were on an extended trip around the country. We came here from Gettysburg. And the reason we came here, my mom, Charlotte, mentioned, she says, I got 2 second cousins in this place called, in Windburn and State College. And I heard of State College, because the football. She said, you should go visit them. So we did. So those 2 cousins were Bill Lipke and Amelia Dolly Lipke. So this is November 1992, and we contacted Bill and Helen, and he invited us to Thanksgiving dinner, which we were very appreciative of. We were very impressed with their house. If you've seen it, we understood it was based on Martha Washington's house, Federalist style. It was very impressive. We met some of my 3rd cousins. I don't know if anybody of them is here today. Susan, guess not. Her son Seth, Donna, and her son David. So it was very nice. And I have to tell you that the Lidkeys were always graciously mentioned by my mom and her mom as being just fine people. So I think there's many descendants that we here today. The next day we found Windburn. This was the days before Google Maps, so somehow we got here. I don't know how. Well, we did, and we went to the home of Ralph and Dolly Roth. So Ralph was a minister. I don't know if he was, I was told he wasn't officially the pastor, but he was sort of a regional director, Bob, in the Baptist movement. So, but we had supper in the house that had been Dolly's father's. Also at the supper, there was Leroy Bird. So Larry, are you, what relative are you?
That was our father, yes.
Yeah, so we got to meet your dad, you know, third of a century ago. And I understand that he had lost his wife. Yeah, and we met Rosalie. Yeah, so we actually got to meet some of the family. And we were taken on a tour of Wittenberg. You know, of course, I'd never heard of this place. I have to tell you, people from Pennsylvania don't know Wittenberg, but it had been a bustling place. There must have been a couple thousand people here. So Ralph showed us the Ziehmer meat market. He said, here's the house that your Uncle John built. Now, we heard about Uncle John. I have to tell you that my mom mentioned Uncle John quite a bit, but it wasn't like Uncle John. It was Uncle John. It was like, it was literally with reverence. Not to be blasphemous in the church. So they took us to the cemetery, and there was Uncle John, and then they said, here is the grave of Christina Gatsky, who you see in the upper right. And they said, this is your grandmother's grandmother. And we said, what? How? That's really cool, but there's a generation missing. If that's my grandmother's grandmother, who's in between? So Dolly will fill in part of the mystery. She says, your forebear was Paulina, born in what's now Poland, 1859, so we went through the story. They went to Volhynia in the 1860s. I think I found out why they went. There was opportunity there. There was open land. There was people saying, if you Germans come to this territory that's not well settled, you get some tax breaks, you can get exempt from the draft, you get all sorts of, it's kind of the same story today. And also, I found out that this is the Russian serfs had been liberated in 1861. Are you familiar with the serfs? So these are people, look at the younger people over here. So these are people who they weren't quite slaves, but they're kind of getting there. They were essentially property. They could be bought and sold, but they kind of went with the property. And sort of, this was a feudal deal where the lord of the manor protected you, and you in turn provided labor. So the serfs were liberated. They kind of went all sorts of different directions. So there was a deficit of labor, and I think they're looking for people they could sell their land to. Anyway, so he said, well, I think she died in Russia, I don't know. And she had 2 kids born in Segenstal. This was a German community in Volhynia. The translation, I think, is Blessed Valley. So my grandma was Wilhelmina, which is very strange because to see that, actually, this one will get slide. So this is strange because of the kids before, there was a Wilhelm and a Wilhelmina, and my grandma's a Wilhelmina, which I found very confusing. She came here in 1903 with Uncle John, as we were told in the previous presentation. She was 15. So you can, and her sister Matilda, who was known as Tilly, came in 1909 at the age of 14. Now you can imagine when these people left Volhynia. I mean, if you're a teenager, you're probably kind of excited you're going to America, and you're getting out of this podunk place that you grew up. But if you're the older generation, it's like I'm never going to see you again. Remember, 1903, Wilbur and Warhol was still experimenting in North Carolina. But really benefit of that. So they had jobs. Wilhelmina was a cook at one of the nearby hotels. I'm not sure which one. Tilly became a servant in a household. In the 1910 census, Christina, in the upper right, Uncle John, and Wilhelmina, or I should say Minnie and Tilly, were all living in the same household according to the census. So John Ziehmer was listed in that as a coal miner. So in that census records, Christina and Tilly, the younger one, were listed as German speakers, and Wilhelmina and John were listed as English speakers. She had acclimated pretty quick. Anyway, the two girls went off to Brooklyn, to the big city, I think probably for work, and I think maybe to find husbands, which they did. But after, so he filled in the story, but Paulina was a mystery. Okay, so now we come to our 21st century. 3 years ago, my sister Denise networked. In the course of genealogy, she says, hey, I found this guy named Bob Saxton. And he says, this guy is like an encyclopedia of knowledge. He's put all this stuff together. He like knows all this stuff about these mystery people. And also, there was a letter from Tilly and her daughter to Donna Litke that filled in a lot of pieces too. So the first question is, Paulina, like, how come if her daughter came here and her mom came here, how come she didn't come here? So it turns out that they had land. They had something that was estimated at 5 acres. So she had married this fellow, William Leinfeldt. So apparently his ancestry was from Alsace-Lorraine, although he's German. And let's see. So apparently he was deaf. So the deal was, if you come to America and you're deaf, you're probably not going to get through Ellis Island because you can't be a worker. So they had an income and he had a disability. But as we heard the story, as the 1800s wore on, the Russians kind of took over the territory. They became more and more oppressive. Taxes, contracts were voided. It was a terrible time for the Germans. And now, you're German. You're finding you've been working your way east all these decades, and now you're stranded away from your home. So then Bob filled in that. So what happened to Pauline? It turns out by the time of the 1910 census, apparently her 3 sisters were dead. So she was the only girl of the family left living. So what happened to her? So Bob found letters that she sent to William, saying like, we're starving here, we need money. And in the 1930s, the world was starving, right? And if you're in Europe, it's so tough. There was a big famine in Ukraine that Stalin engineered called the Holodomor. You guys familiar with that? That was 1932-33. Somehow she got through that. But the letters kept coming, and the spirit of it was, if you have any love for your sister, please send money because we're literally starting here. My guess is what happened is the Russians, is that Wilhelm did, and probably the other brothers did send money. The Russians probably let the first 1 or 2 letters through, maybe took a little cut, and the rest of them, they just pocketed the money. That's my theory. And so these people were, so now the last letter was 1939. Paulina was born in 1859, so now she's 80 years old, probably no family, no money, in a country where now they hate you. So this is this is the sad part of the talk, because we don't know her fate, but I don't think it was good. Okay, so we'll get to more happy stuff. Let's change the slide. Okay, so now we talked about Paulina had 2 daughters who came here. Minnie, who we always called her grandma. But Minnie and Tilly. This is my grandma, Minnie. And honestly, I don't recognize it. I don't know when this was taken. I would guess 1920-ish. So that's my granddad. His name was Joseph Sondorf. He's a whole nother story. We could talk for 2 more hours about that guy. He came over here with nothing, no English, like, he probably didn't have a penny in his pocket. He eventually put himself through Lehigh University working as a baker, which means he had to get up at 3:30 in the morning every day and go bake. So these are like, the people that came were hardworking people. They weren't lazy. So these guys got married in 1914, and he worked for the Navy from 1915 to 47. He had a distinguished career as a civilian electrical and aeronautic engineer with the U.S. Navy. So here's a guy who got nothing. He's got 0. Okay, here's a couple things here's the topic, things they never told us. It turns out that Minnie had been married before. Well, they never told us that when we were kids. So my sister found the actual marriage certificate, so that's... Secondly, somebody, I don't know who, gave him a coffee shop business in Brooklyn, near the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which was not a good neighborhood. This was tough. So they had, and so now you can see what kind of makes sense. Joseph had been a baker, and Minnie had been a cook. They had this coffee shop, but it went bankrupt. Boy, we never heard that. And even in today's modern Germany, my understanding is a bankruptcy is a lifetime disgrace. When we live in Silicon Valley, bankruptcy is a positive on your resume. but in those days, it's not. So apparently, my sister found out Al Capone lived in the neighborhood, so maybe he stopped in for a coffee and a donut or something. Anyway, he became an aeronautical engineer, and he worked for the Navy in Lakehurst, New Jersey. The Navy had something called the dirigible program. Do you guys know what a dirigible is? Okay, these guys, younger guys. So they're not blimps. These were actually 800-foot-long rigid vessels. These were ships of the U.S. Navy. There was the Akron and the Macon. And he was involved in the engineering of those. This was Lakehurst, New Jersey. The West Coast terminus was near where we live. Now it's called Moffett Field. Next slide. Okay, so anyway, Joseph and Minnie, I don't know where this is. No. So my mom's about 10. So this would have been the late 20s, maybe 1930. So maybe he's in Lakehurst, New Jersey. So they had 5 girls. My mom's smack dab in the middle. This is probably not the best place psychologically to be. But they're, they're obviously, they're doing well. Next slide. So this is a Christmas card they sent, season's greetings from the Sandor family. And you can see the lettering is kind of Gothic. My granddad couldn't write like that. And this was one of the dirigibles. This thing is 800 feet long, so this is as big as a cruise ship, a modern cruise ship. It had like a crew of 40 plus 20 pilots. It had planes that would attach to it, biplanes. So it had pilots and mechanics, and it was a ship of the Navy. Unfortunately, in the mid-1930s, both of the dirigibles, the Akron and the Macron, both crashed. One off North Carolina and one off the California coast. Let's see. Let's go to the next slide. So this is happy. I'm kind of the geeky looking guy in the bottom left there. And so this is kind of the happy part of the story. So this is Wilhelmina, the 15-year-old girl who comes to Windberg. And this is her, so this is probably 1960, 62. So, this is happy. Look at all the descendants right here. Next slide, please. So this is their 50th anniversary. This is in San Jose, California. The Navy kind of jumped him around a little bit, but the place he liked best was Santa Clara Valley, where we live in California. And they had a house that they could grow through. So Minnie could grow anything. They had these, and she had a green thumb. She had an aviary. I'm talking about aviary. I'm talking about 2 walk-in cages. They were probably total about 2/3 of platform up here. And she would take in sick birds and save them. And she was this amazing person that I remember for her 50th anniversary, her 5 daughters bought her this newfangled thing called a color TV. And we had never seen one before. So she could also paint. So she would get these dishes that were glazed, and she had, this is all hand painted, the roses and the gold leaf, and they just did stuff like this. So this is the final slide. So Paulina Leinfeld had a daughter, Wilhelmina, Armini, and Tilly. But then Bob Saxton came up with another mystery. And there's 2 more children, apparently. There's a Julius, or maybe in German, Julius, and Olga. Like, who are these people? And until Bob put them in a chart, we never ever heard that there was any other people in this family. So this is the final mystery. As we know, the life got harder and harder for the Germans, and the Germans invaded Russia, so the ball game was over. So, but could there be any descendants of ours that are still in Europe somewhere? How would we ever know? The only way is like say through Ancestry.com. I think I have genetic record in Ancestry.com, and I know there's Ziehmers in there. And maybe someday somebody will answer. Anyway, that's my talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. Tom, thank you so much for that terrific background in the family. I think my mom's going to come up and say a few words.
A few words. Look at this.
Few words. Just a little light reading.
Just a few announcements. It's not really this scary. I don't do this. Well, I did a long time ago on airplanes, but I have a partition, so I didn't have to look at faces. Sorry.
Turn her up.
Thank you, Skylar.
Sky,
Appreciate that.
turn it up a little bit.
Turn it up.
Hold on a minute. Food is ready. We're running over time in here.
Yeah, I'm fast. I'll be fast.
I would suggest that you go and eat first. Do some sharing after eating. You also want to take a group photo.
We do want to take a group photo. Yeah, well, think about that. Okay, let me say what I have to say. Thank you. Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, thank you, Skylar.
That's better.
Thank you, presenters. Every year we learn something new about this family, and I think it's absolutely fascinating. I'm going to go back to last year's presentation. It is still on YouTube. So if you didn't see it, or you want to see it again, look at Forest Baptist, Pennsylvania YouTube. And you'll find it. You have to scroll through a lot of things. And what you'll see is a picture of Skylar and his wife, Grace, as William and Amelia. And that's it. Worth looking at. Next year, if any of you are out there sitting there thinking, boy, this is great, but my grandparents did this, and I'd like to do a skit, or I'd like to sing a song. If anybody has any ideas for the reunion, do it. Let us know. This is new this year. Sam Saxon did that incredible family tree over there, which you've got to go see and talk to him about. It's amazing. So we're always happy to get new things. Big family, I know there's a lot of talent out there. So the next thing I'm going to do is read a short thing called When Coal Was Raining, My View of Windburn, Pennsylvania in the 1970s. Use my shaky voice. Early morning fog lifts off the meadows. Another day is dawning on the hill. Houses lacking paint still dot the valley. With memories are the empty coal mines filled. Stores once prospered with the rush of business, and rumbles of long coal trains filled the air. And once upon a time, there by the station, streetcars on their tracks would wait for fares. Once shiny rails are rusty now and silent, as grass and weeds grow up between the ties. Timbers on the tipple all are rotting, in fields small aspen and wild brambles rise. Young ones have all moved off to the cities, while stores long shuttered gather dust and fade. With every changing of another season, these thoughts into an old man's head parade. Of times when things were so very different, when many families in this town were raised, of days when men rode down the shafts to labor, when cattle in the nearby pastures grazed. He thinks of when the skull was filled with laughter, not boarded and neglected as it stands. Of days when men walked many miles to work here, and most all men in town had calloused hands. He shakes his head and wonders what is coming. A tear is shed at thoughts of where he'll go. They've almost closed the little Clapham church down that his grandfather founded years ago. A day will come, and not so far away now, he'll lay to rest right here forevermore. Near to long-gone neighbors and his kinfolk,